AAA gaming is literally imploding on itself right now, and honestly dude, I couldn't be any happier. For years, we've been watching these massive corporate publishers churn out the same bloated microtransaction-filled slop, treating gamers like walking ATM machines while completely ignoring what we actually want. And now the bill is finally coming due. Big Daddy Ubisoft is basically sitting in a burning room right now, sipping their coffee and telling their investors that this is fine, while the entire foundation of their company collapses into a pile of ash. Their stock is tanking, they're restructuring everything, and their desperation is now painfully obvious. And hey, if you enjoy watching these massive corporate empires crumble as much as I do yourself a favor and hit the subscribe button so you can stay updated. Because, yeah, Ubisoft is frantically trying to stop the bleeding, and who pays the price? The actual talented developers who make the games. Just recently, news broke that Ubisoft is effectively killing off Red Storm Entertainment. If you don't know who Red Storm is, they're literally the legendary studio founded by Tom Clancy himself almost 30 years ago. These are the guys who built the foundation for tactical shooters. They made the original Rainbow Six, they made Ghost Recon, and for as much as I suck at those games, I gotta give respect where respect is due. And what's their reward for decades of carrying Ubisoft's classic tactical shooter franchises? They got gutted. Ubisoft laid off over 100 developers there, and basically told the remaining staff that all the active game development is gonna be cancelled. According to an IGN report, the studio is being shifted to a quote, support role, where they'll just focus on global IT services and the Snowdrop engine. Just think about that for a second. Let's put some respect on Red Storm's name. This studio didn't just make games, they defined an entire era of multiplayer gaming. If you played Xbox Live back in the day, you were probably playing a Red Storm game. They understood tactical methodical gameplay before every shooter became a twitchy, slide-canceling sweat fest where all of the little Timmies and Jimmies are hopped up on Smarties and Monster energy drinks. And to see them gutted, their current projects like The Division Heartland getting cancelled, and their remaining staff told to go work on the Snowdrop engine, it's downright depressing. It shows that in the eyes of these mega publishers, legacy means absolutely nothing. One of the most historically significant studios in the genre has been reduced to an IT help desk. You can build the foundation of an entire shooter division, and they will still toss you in the garbage the second their stock prices take a dip. But it gets even better because, while Ubisoft is busy firing the people who actually make their games, they are also getting dragged into court by the people who buy them. If you remember a while back, Ubisoft decided to completely shut down their servers for their 2014 racing game, The Crew. And no, they didn't patch in an offline mode. They didn't leave the single-player campaign intact. They just pulled the plug and rendered the game completely unplayable. It's basically digital toilet paper. Well, gamers aren't just taking it lying down anymore. A massive French consumers' rights group called the UFCQQ, well, you can read it on the screen there, I'm not going to embarrass myself, is officially suing Ubisoft over this. The lawsuit straight up alleges that Ubisoft misled consumers and imposed abusive contracts, arguing that it's completely unacceptable for a publisher to just revoke your license to a game you paid full price for. And this lawsuit is being heavily backed by the Stop Killing Games movement, which has been making massive waves in the EU Parliament. Ubisoft actually had the nerve to argue that players weren't buying a game, they were just buying a license to play the game. Like, dude, imagine buying a lawnmower from Home Depot, and 5 years later a guy in a suit shows up to your garage, takes the engine out and says, oh, you didn't buy the lawnmower, you just bought a license to cut grass, and now your license has expired. It's absolute nonsense. I miss the days of the PS3 and Xbox 360 where you bought a disc and owned it forever. Now we're just renting our games until the studios eventually pull the plug. So seeing Ubisoft actually get sued for the these anti-consumer practices brings a pretty big smile to my face. It's no wonder they're struggling to sell copies of their new games. For the past decade now, Ubisoft has basically copy-pasted the exact same formula into every single franchise they own. They took games that used to be grounded and immersive and turned them into bloated RPGs, where every enemy has a massive health bar floating over their head. You can sneak up behind a guy in an Assassin's Creed game, stab him directly in the jugular, and he turns around and smacks you because his arbitrary level is 2 numbers higher than yours. It completely ruins the immersion. They tried to artificially inject these grinding mechanics into games like Far Cry and Ghost Recon just so they could sell you time-saver microtransactions to skip the boring parts of the game they intentionally created. It's the very definition of creating a problem just to sell you the solution, and gamers are finally waking up and refusing to buy into it. And because their entire corporate strategy is falling apart, it's spilling over into their actual game releases. Let's talk about the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake. Now, Black Flag is arguably the most beloved game in the entire franchise. I put some pretty stupid hours into that game just sailing around, upgrading my ship, and forcing my crew to sing sea shanties while we robbed the British Navy blind. It was a masterpiece, so naturally, Ubisoft wanted to remake it to cash in on that nostalgia. But according to new reports from Insider Gaming, the remake, which is apparently titled Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, has been caught up in Ubisoft's massive internal restructuring. It was supposedly scheduled for early 2026, but now it's been delayed by potentially up to a year, getting pushed into 2027. And honestly, rumors are even floating around Reddit that the game might be on the chopping block entirely, just like the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake that got thrown out the window. Like, how do you fumble a remake of a PS4 game? You already have the blueprint. The game was practically perfect, but modern Ubisoft is so bloated, so bogged down by corporate bureaucracy, and a desperate need to monetize every single pixel, that they can't even get a guaranteed slam dunk out the door. They cancel games, they delay games, and all while Tencent is circling above them like a vulture, buying up chunks of the company. It's a complete disaster class in how to run a gaming studio. But here's the absolute best part of all this. While the massive AAA machine is breaking down, the actual talented individuals are escaping and proving that you don't need a $200 million budget to make a good video game. Take a look at a guy named Darenn Keller. This dude was a young French game designer who landed what he thought was his absolute dream job at Ubisoft. He worked on massive titles like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Assassin's Creed Mirage, and the Ghost Recon series. But instead of living the dream, he realized that modern AAA development is a nightmare. In a recent interview with Games Radar, Keller basically said that working at Ubisoft made him miserable. He felt like just, quote, one cog in a massive bloated machine where he had absolutely zero impact on the final product. So what did he end up doing? He quit. He left this cushy corporate job at Ubisoft with only 2 years of savings and no real plan. He went full indie. And the result? He created a minimalist survival city builder game called Dawnfolk. He made it entirely by himself. No massive boardrooms, no calculated diversity consultants, no executives breathing down his neck asking how to implement a battle pass. And guess what? Dawnfolk currently sits at an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam. Keller made a Reddit post celebrating the game's anniversary, and he flat up said, "It didn't go viral, but it sold 26,000 copies and it still pays my rent." Like, let that sink in for a second. Keller even pointed out that his game isn't a massive viral hit like Bellatro, but it doesn't need to be. It allows him to make a living doing what he loves without sacrificing his soul to a massive corporation. He said, "Making a sustainable living from games is brutally difficult, and the fact that this one lets me keep creating feels like a win." And that's honestly the pure essence of gaming and game development. A developer having an idea, executing it with passion, and delivering a complete, satisfying experience to gamers at a reasonable price. And you really have to respect guys like Keller. He talked about how working from home during the pandemic really put things into perspective for him. When he couldn't collaborate closely with his team at the office, the reality of just being another number on a massive corporate spreadsheet became pretty much impossible to ignore. He realized that as a solo developer, it can be incredibly lonely, but the trade-off is absolute creative freedom. He's not wasting his time trying to convince anyone or trying to communicate his ideas. He just builds exactly what he wants. If a mechanic works, great. If it sucks, he removes it and tries something else. There's no waiting for approval from 3 different layers of middle management who are, like, afraid of upsetting the shareholders. And that's exactly why indie games are absolutely mopping the floor with AAA games right now. It's such a huge contrast to the absolute garbage fire happening at his former employer, Ubisoft. They require thousands of developers working across multiple continents over the course of 5 years just to push out another generic open world game with damage sponge enemies, but hey, they're gonna charge us like $120 for the Ultimate Edition, so I guess that makes up for everything. And if it doesn't end up selling 10 million copies on day 1, they're gonna panic, fire 100 more people, and shut down a studio. Meanwhile, one guy in his room makes a game that sells 26,000 copies and is considered a massive success that pays his bills and lets him fund his next project. Now imagine Ubisoft with all of that passion and none of the creative restrictions. You know, it kind of feels like they were like that once upon a time. The AAA gaming industry is completely out of touch with reality. They're addicted to inflated budgets and live service trends that gamers are actively voicing their rejection for. They want every game to make $1 billion, and when it doesn't, they implode. And honestly, I say let them. Let these massive studios fall apart. Let the executives panic as their stock prices plummet to the bottom of the ocean. Because from the ashes of these bloated corporations, we're getting a massive renaissance of independent and AA developers who actually care about the medium. Gamers are speaking with their wallets. We're tired of being told we don't own our games. We're tired of paying $70 for broken, unfinished slop. We're tired of seeing legendary studios like Red Storm reduced to tech support. We want complete, passionate experiences, whether that's a massive hit like Manor Lords made by one guy, a quiet success like Dawnfolk, or just retreating back to our reliable single-player masterpieces made by the few remaining AAA studios that actually seem to care. One way or another, gamers are gonna support what they want and throw the rest in the garbage bin. So yeah, seeing Ubisoft scramble and get sued while their former developers go on to find happiness and success, it's poetic justice. It proves that the future of gaming doesn't belong to the corporate suits and boardrooms, it belongs to the actual creators. Anyway dude, I'ma get back to reading some of my visual novels, because even reading an animated book with hand-drawn images is infinitely more entertaining than what Ubisoft is putting out lately. This is RageWatch and I'm out. Thanks for watching.